We are continuing to read some gastrophysics. Today's about social dining. So, just wanting to learn what the effect of reading with people is. In general, I'm wanting to get more awareness into different ways of thinking about how to make my tea sessions better. I like to drink tea by myself mostly, but I also like to drink tea with a lot of friends. It's my favorite thing to do is to drink tea, and sharing it with people is a lot of fun. So I want to learn different ways to improve it in many different areas that I don't normally think about. That's why I'm reading this book. So we're going to continue reading that book. Chapter today is about social dining. I don't know about you, but I don't like dining out alone. And so human interest, actually I do, I like to dine out alone. I've done it many times. I enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, I like good food, so I mean, there's nothing else to go behind that statement. Right? I like good food. If I get to go out and have good food, it doesn't really matter if I'm alone or with other people. I do like to eat with other people. I do it often, but I like eating alone. I don't know about you, but I don't like dining out alone. And so, a human interest story in the papers recently caught my attention. It concerned a nonagenarian British widower, Harry Scott, who had been dining alone at his local McDonald's pretty much every day, sometimes twice a day for the last 3 years. I think nonagenarian is a 90-year-old, and a widower means his wife has passed. The sad truth was that he simply had no one else to share his meals with since his wife died. So, on the occasion of his 93rd birthday, the staff at the branch in Workington, Cumbria, held a party for the old geezer. I have to say, looking at the picture that appeared in the papers at the time, that Harry appeared to be in much better shape than you might have expected. While in this while this is an isolated case, I nevertheless think that it is indicative of what is happening in society at large. For the fact of the matter is that a growing number of us are dining alone. And there's a figure of somebody dining alone. There's no need. There's no need. There's no need for this figure, but there's a figure. I don't need an image of that. Nearly half of all the meals are now eaten alone, and more than a quarter of us eat by ourselves more often than we eat in company. More than a quarter of people eat alone than they eat in company. Hmm. Who are the people eating together? I guess families, if you have like a big family or something. Or wife and kids. 75% of people. Seems like a lot of people. A lot of people are eating together. It's pretty cool. According to one British survey, that's according to a survey, only British. Worse still, many of us eat our main meal in isolation most days, and perhaps lunch alone at our desk, or consuming a microwave meal, or grabbing a bite to eat at a drive-through. Yeah, I eat most of my lunches. When I go to work, I eat most of my lunches at my desk alone. Given that the figures vary by culture and age, why not cut up how many meals you have eaten by yourself over the last week, say, and see if you do not buck the trend. I definitely don't. I've eaten one meal with somebody in the last week. Today is today is Friday. Let's see, I ate a meal with somebody on Wednesday. I ate a meal with somebody on Sunday. Saturday, I don't think so. Hmm. Maybe Saturday. I don't remember. Yeah. So maybe 3 meals out of the last week which would have been 7 times 3 meals, 21 meals. About. But why, you might ask, should we even care about this change in our eating behavior? Beyond being concerned by the growing isolation that it hints in our society today. And what exactly has the company got to do with the experience of food that we eat, that is the topic of this book, namely gastrophysics? Not everybody thinks that we should be worried. Here, Neil Fretzel, writing in The Guardian, like life's other great pleasures, eating alone is something you can do one-handed, lying on your back, in nothing but an old jumper, should you wish. It isn't lonely, it isn't distasteful, it isn't desperate, it's a celebration of existence. It keeps us alive, it's simple as that. I beg to disagree. As we'll see later, much of the evidence points towards dining solo having a negative impact on people's physical health and mental well-being. A recent meta-analysis of 17 different studies involving more than 1,800 adolescents and children revealed that regularly sharing meals with family reduced the odds of the youngsters being overweight by 12%. It also increased the likelihood of their eating healthy foods by almost 25%. Not only that, but as a gastrophysicist, I would agree with the American psychologist Harry Howlow, who, back in the 1930s, put it thus: a good meal tastes better if we eat it in the company of friends. Gastrophysics offers a constructive framework in which to look for solutions to the growing problem associated with solo dining. I don't feel that way. I definitely... It depends on what is meant. Let me reread this sentence. A good meal tastes better. No. I don't think a good meal tastes better with other people. I might have a fun experience with other people. I'm often just distracted. And another thing I thought about is just I get asked to eat lunch with people often at my office, and they often go out to eat food that is not very doesn't sit well in my own stomach, doesn't feel good. I also like to go to the gym. I go to the gym during the lunch hours at work, so I'll go to the gym and then come back and go to the grocery store, get some food, and then eat that. So I'm eating much cheaper and eating much healthier, generally. I mean, not generally, just definitely. When I eat alone at my office. So I guess it's just a special case. I definitely eat the worst food when I eat out with friends and people. Now, I guess the alternative would be eating at home, some sort of healthy home-cooked meal. But even still, I don't know. I don't think my home-cooked meal, my mom's home-cooked meals are not particularly healthy. My dad's home-cooked meals are not particularly healthy. My grandma's home-cooked meals are not particularly healthy. Would I like if I just had the meals that I normally eat by myself, just like pretty often just steak and kale, mostly what I eat. Would I like if I had it with friends? Yes. Why are so many of us eating alone? Part of the reason is undoubtedly linked to the fact that more of us are living alone than ever before, partially due to marrying later, divorce rates going up, and people living alone for longer. Another important factor here relates to the changing food habits. For one thing, there are simply far fewer meal-based family gatherings than at any other point in the recent past. When was the last time you asked anyone over to your house for dinner? I don't think I've ever asked anybody over at my house for dinner. I've had people over my house for other things, and it led to dinner, but I've never asked anybody over my house for dinner. I don't think. According to the results of one recent study, 78% of Brits virtually never invite their friends over at meal times anymore. When quizzed about why, the reason that most people give is that they just find it too much of a chore to prepare food from scratch, given their increasingly hectic lifestyles. It's not. It doesn't take that much work to prepare food from scratch. I don't do that often. I guess I do. I don't prepare good, palatable food that I would want to share to other people. I just make steak with a little bit of salt on it. Indeed, the average time spent preparing a meal has dropped from about an hour back in the 1960s to about 34 minutes per day. What all this means is that 1 in 3 of us will go an entire week without eating dinner with another person. Entire week without dinner. Yeah. I eat most weeks I don't have dinner with anybody. But most weeks I will have one or two meals of lunch with people. So is solo dining really bad? Dining solo is bad in a number of ways. I like how direct that is. That's good. On the one hand, those who eat by themselves tend to engage in poorer food behaviors. In males, for instance, eating and living alone are jointly associated with higher prevalence of weight problems, by which I mean obesity at one end of the spectrum and being underweight, or engaged in unhealthy eating behaviors such as low fruit and vegetables intakes at the other end. Yeah. Unsurprisingly, those who dine solo are more likely to feel lonely. Many older individuals who find themselves in hospital or in long-term care can also suffer from undernutrition, which is made worse by their often being forced to eat solo. Anything can be done to bring social element back to dining is likely to help improve nutritional status of those vulnerable individuals. Okay, this is what I was thinking a second ago. I don't think I eat more vegetables when I eat with people. It seems like well, I mean, this is just a me thing, I guess, but I eat a lot of kale, bell peppers, and carrots, and I eat a bunch of vegetables when I'm alone eating. It's usually what I eat: raw vegetables and steak, rotisserie chicken. If I'm eating with people, I'm having like Korean barbecue. I'm eating maybe like potatoes. I don't think that count. I don't know if that counts as a vegetable from this, definition here. Definitely not healthy. When I say potatoes, I mean French fries. Or fried foods. I don't know. I eat a lot of fruit by myself. A lot of dates, a lot of mango, a lot of grapes. Yum. That sounds delicious. For instance, a couple of studies conducted in the US demonstrated that elderly hospitalized patients ended up consuming significantly more food when they were encouraged to engage in more active interpersonal behavior with their caregivers at mealtime. Those who live by themselves and hence regularly eat alone tend to generate far more food waste than those who live and dine with others, a problem exacerbated by the fact the portion sizes that are commonly available in the supermarket often do not cater to those living alone. Portion sizes at a supermarket. I guess I don't know what people are buying. Can't you just tell them that you want it to be resized for a single person, or you just like buy less of the thing? So I don't know what is being bought at a supermarket. That cannot be changed for living alone. According to a 2013 UK government survey, people living alone throw away 40% more of their food than those living with others. Wow. Dining with distraction. The decline of more social aspects of dining is not restricted to the increasing proportion of us who, for whatever reason, eat alone. Technology has a part to play. How often, after all, do you have the TV on at meal times? And how often do you find yourself with a fork or spoon or chopsticks in one hand and your smartphone in the other? Even if I don't watch TV. Recently, I've been watching TV. I started watching this Netflix anime called Pluto. It's so good. And I've been watching a lot of Beast Games in the last like 4 weeks or 3 weeks since it's been out. Um, but I really don't watch TV very often. Um, so that doesn't happen for me. Smartphone, I might listen to a podcast while eating. So it happens fairly often. Not every time, but fairly often. Even those of us who are physically sitting together at the dining table are often too often distracted by the TV or else fiddling with our mobile devices. In fact, according to the statistics, almost half of us watch TV while eating, and many of us do it in separate rooms from our companions. Our ingenious solution to counteract all of this technology-induced distraction was trialed by a Brazilian bar at Bar Salve Jorge back in 2013. They introduced the offline glass, a beer glass whose base was partially cut away so that it could only stand up if supported by the customer's mobile device. The idea was that it enforced disconnection from the patron's technology and would hopefully result in people being more sociable when being out drinking. I'm sure that we have seen those unromantic couples dining together, not speaking to one another, engrossed instead in whatever happens on their mobile screens. Dining together alone, as it were. Of course, sometimes even those who aren't distracted by their handheld technology don't necessarily have much to talk about. The idea to alleviate this situation comes from the Bocuse restaurant at the Culinary Institute of America campus in upstate New York, where they provide a box filled with cards on every table. Wow. Every card poses a culinary question or a joke. But why are they there? It is certainly not something that you would normally expect to see in a fancy restaurant, is it? When asked the last time I visited the institute's director told me that the game had been strategically introduced to help break the ice for couples who may have been lost for anything to say. The hope is that the cards will improve the diner's mood and so enhance their enjoyment of whatever they happen to order. This is an example of a mental palate cleanser, like the plastic cow that came across the page earlier. Interesting. Do I usually have... Well, I go out to eat with my friends. Pretty much my closest friends, so I usually have a lot to talk about. Usually something like Mr. Beast or AI technology. Eating with the TV is one of the worst things you can do in terms of increased consumption. Finding that people eat 15% more food when the telly is on compared to when the telly is off. is not unusual. That said, not all shows are equally bad for our waistlines. It seems to depend on how engaging the TV show is, and whether or not we have seen it before. For instance, Dick Stevenson and his colleagues in Australia found that women who viewed the same episode of Friends twice consumed significantly more food than those who got to go watch a different episode of a hit TV show instead. Generally speaking, the more food-related sensory cues that we are aware of, the less we tend to eat. Hence, when distracted by television, and presumably this applies to the mobile devices, the danger is that we simply fail to pay attention to the food-related stimulation and end up consuming more before we realize that we were actually full. And there are other reasons not to watch TV while eating, as this no-nonsense advice suggests. Mealtimes have been noted as one of the most common times children communicate with parents. So, if possible, guard your mealtimes from outside distractions, turn off the TV, and turn off the cell phones. That's interesting. I remember when I was back in the day, living at my mom's place, I would drink tea. This is back when I really early on learned about tea and started drinking it. I would watch a lot of Riverdale and drink tea, and South Park drinking tea, and I think Curb Your Enthusiasm was on at that time also. I remember having a nice lineup of shows to watch. Pretty much every night after work, I'd come home and watch some television and drink some tea. Good days. Yeah, Riverdale was really popular back then. Popular to me. I don't know how popular it was, generally speaking. I guess it was kind of popular, but Riverdale, what a good show. I like detective shows. I just like the genre of detective shows, so the quality of the show is not incredibly important. If anybody's familiar with Riverdale, the quality is it's not that great, but it's such a good show. I love it. And South Park, of course, is an amazing show. The writing is fantastic. Anyway, back in those days, I would watch a lot of TV while eating and drinking tea. And then I realized at some point, well, first thing I realized was that drinking tea at night not very good for sleep, which made it more distracting for me to drink more tea or pay attention to tea the next day. Specifically, I just started getting caffeine headache. Like I started, having sleeping problems and getting caffeine headaches. And I didn't like that very much, so I started sleeping really early and drinking tea in the morning. So I'd wake up really early and watch TV and drink tea. And then I started to realize that I was distracted from drinking the tea while watching Riverdale. I'm just saying Riverdale, but for example, one of those shows that I was watching. Realizing that being distracted while drinking the tea was not so... I was distracted. I mean, it's in the word. Having my attention split between the tea and the TV show was distracting from both. That's how I should say it. And so I stopped doing both at the same time. Do you enjoy dining alone? I have a few colleagues, mainly, it has to be said, chefs, who say that they sometimes, and only sometimes, mind you, prefer to eat alone. Why? Well, because it allows them to pay attention to what is on their plate. Yep, flavor combinations and textures and contrasts. That's exactly how I feel. Hey, what's up, Rajiv? If they are going into a gastronomic hotspot, they may well choose to dine solo rather than risk being distracted by the need to make conversation. Yeah, perhaps I should have used this line at the time I turned up by myself for the meal at Fat Duck. They called me unromantic, but I haven't registered that it was Valentine's Day yet. Needless to say, Heston has enjoyed teasing me about this whenever the topic has come up since. For me, like many others, I suspect, the experience of dining alone is never anything like as enjoyable as dining with others, no matter how enjoyable the food. Maybe that's just me being an introvert and liking to be alone and not really liking talking to people all the time. After all, great food and drink are nearly always pleasures best shared, and the best meal or wine, the more that you want to share it. The better the meal or wine, the more that you want to share it. Wow, I don't feel that way. To the extent that our mood is likely to be better when we dine in company than it is by sitting by ourselves, I'm sure that the food and drink really does taste better to us too when in company, at least when company is that we enjoy. Maybe that's the problem. I don't feel, I feel really good by myself. I don't feel that much better with other people. Usually not better at all with other people. So maybe that's it. Intriguingly, dramatic mood swings are associated with significant changes in taste and smell sensitivity. Our hedonic response to food and drink can also be affected. Who, after all, ever had a great tasting meal when fighting with their partners? Be interesting to test. Find somebody, fight them, and eat food. Do like a food analysis. The shared meal is a universal human phenomenon, with evidence of feasting going back to more than 12,000 years in the archaeological record. They're a little more expressive of companionship, derived from the Latin together, cum, together, and panis, which is bread. Companionship means bread together. Then the shared meal. There's nothing more expressive of companionship than shared meal. Carolyn Steele, in her book Hungry City, makes the point that we are hardwired to feel close to those whom we share food, and to define us alien those who eat entirely different food than us. She also picks up on a great line from the Oscar Wilde's A Woman of No Importance. After a great dinner, one can forgive anyone, even one's own relatives. The latest research shows that eating together can increase agreeableness too, thus giving a whole new slant to the topic of diplomacy. Gastrodiplomacy. According to my Oxford psychology colleague, Professor Robin Dunbar, the act of eating together triggers the endorphin system in the brain, and the endorphins play an important role in the social bonding in humans. Taking the time to sit down together over a meal helps create social networks that in turn have profound effects on our physical and mental health, our happiness and well-being, and even our sense of purpose in life. All the more worrying given the latest statistics showing that almost 70% of people have never shared a meal with their neighbors. I've never shared a meal with my neighbors. Furthermore, when quizzed, 20% of us admitted that it had been more than 6 months since we had last shared a meal with our parents. It's been, I guess, about a week. Ate with my family over Christmas. But before that, it must have been a couple months, not 6 months, but a couple months. It should never be forgotten that the table is the original social network. Gastrophysics research shows that dining with companions can, and probably does, exert a significant impact on how much we eat. Whether or not we eat more or less depends on who we are with and how much we are trying to impress them. Evidence from both the laboratory and from the naturalistic dining studies shows that the amount of food consumed typically goes up when we dine with others as compared to when we eat alone. This increase is more pronounced when dining with friends and family than when we eat with those with whom we are less familiar. Males in particular tend to eat more in groups than when alone at a restaurant setting. Okay. So now we're getting to something that I want to take notes on. Okay. Eating with friends. Higher consumption eating with friends and family. Men in particular tend to eat more in groups than when they're eating alone at a restaurant. The social effects on consumption may. We have nothing to say about women? Okay. Do we just assume it's the opposite for women, or do we. Okay. These social effects, I wonder. I wonder if you have a man and a woman eating together, is the total amount of food consumed the same if they would have eaten alone? Because the man eats more and the woman eats less. Anyway. These social effects on consumption may, in part, relate to the longer duration of the dinner in company. However, if we are trying to impress whoever we are with, or else we are nervous, then we may well end up eating less, and also tend to consume less than we might otherwise when those around us hardly touch their food. Remarkably, such social effects on consumption have even been demonstrated in subjects who have had nothing to eat for 24 hours. Oh, people who have fasted. People who are fasted. If you haven't eaten for 24 hours, you still might eat less if you're around other people who are not eating. The next time you go out for a meal, you should bear the following in mind. The biggest problem with dining in company is the fact that it reduces the likelihood of you getting to order first. This means that because those who order first generally tend to enjoy the food and drink more than those who order later. What? Seems a bit strange. Those who order first generally tend to enjoy their food and drink more than those who order later. The latter often end up feeling that they should have chosen something different, and as a result, they may enjoy the experience a little less than they would have done if they had chosen first. And given that women tend to order first in mixed company, this probably means that they generally enjoy their food more than men. Probably. That's a probably statement, not an actual statement. As we saw in the sound chapter, many people have been complaining in recent years about restaurants and bars being too noisy. They simply can't hear themselves think, never mind taste the food. As one commenter put it, you go to a restaurant to be social. These days, you often come out none the wiser of what the other person has said. As we have seen, one response. I went to a Peruvian restaurant this Wednesday, and could not talk to the friend I was with because it was so loud. Also, couldn't talk to the waitresses because they spoke Spanish. As we have seen, one response. I didn't pay attention to Spanish class in high school. As we have seen, one response to this has been to go out to the other extreme and introduce silent dinners, where none of the diners are allowed to speak. However, it is the fact that the meal is fundamentally a social activity or an occasion that helps, I think, to explain the long-term failure of this particular concept. Putting in earplugs to drown out the noise, or donning on a pair of headphones to play a dish-specific soundscape or piece of music works well for a single course, but any more than that and the social dynamics of the meal will be disrupted too much. Notice, in contrast, that while all those dine-in-the-dark restaurants also remove one of the diner's senses, the darkness doesn't mess with the social aspects of the dining. There's a key difference between the dark and silent dining. If anything, diners are likely to have more talk when the lights are out, for instance, comparing the uncertainty about exactly what they're eating. When you dine in the dark, you don't know what you're eating? Don't they tell you? Pretty sure. Well, I don't know. Maybe in some places they don't tell you what you're eating, but I remember being told what I was eating. Catering for the solo diner. Until recently, if you saw someone dining alone, you might have seen a little sad and almost like they were a social outcast. What they don't have any friends, you might have thought to yourself. This stigma, though, is starting to wane. Indeed, more people are dining out by themselves than ever before, with the number of solo diners more than doubling in the last 2 years, or I guess in the last 2 years since 2015. In fact, a party of one is the fastest growing size for reservations at restaurants in the UK. But what do all those solo diners do to keep themselves entertained while waiting for their order to arrive? According to a recent study, 46% of people say that they would pass the time reading a book, while 36% played with their phone. Seems like a lot of people reading books. 36 play with their phone. The changing sentiment is nicely captured by the following quote from someone writing into the BBC after a publication of an article on solo dining. I remember a time only a few years ago when I found the idea eating out alone to be depressing. I would view solo dining as a sad and lonely experience. Now I eat out by myself quite often, and sometimes I prefer it to the company of others. One more thing than any other has made this change from my perspective, which is the smartphone. I suppose solo diners really aren't solo anymore at all. Some even view these individuals who dine solo in public as being confident high achievers. Wow. Out enjoying the well-deserved rewards of their labor. Like the wonderfully opinionated food critic Jay Reiner, I'm not worried about anyone thinking I'm sad. I'm not worried about anyone thinking I am a sad bastard. Eating alone should be dinner with someone. Eating alone should be dinner with someone you love. Oh yeah. Well, that's kind of cute. Part of this change in attitude may relate to the fact that more diners are now sharing every detail of what they eat, the pictures of their meals on blogs and on social media. There is even a collection of images on Tumblr called Dimly Lit Meals for One. This recent trend seems to be gaining traction and goes hand in hand with our growing connection to our mobile devices. A relationship that, according to some, is best described as nothing short of a love affair. Others, meanwhile, are happy to isolate themselves with their meals and their MP3 players and their over-the-ear noise-canceling headphones. Does anybody have an MP3 player anymore? And this book is written in 2015, I think it is, or 20-something. Copyright 2017. Did we have an MP3 player 7 years ago? 8 years ago? I don't know. It feels like a really old term, MP3 player. Many forward-thinking restaurateurs see this shifting demographic as a marketing opportunity. Like Ivan Flowers, the executive chef at San Diego's Top of the Market restaurant. He was brought in by the management specifically to increase the number of solo diners. They felt that while the eatery had already had bar seating in the front of the open kitchen, it was underutilized because the chefs weren't interacting enough with the customers. Flower continues. Solo diners sitting by the kitchen now get to see a show, which includes cooking demos, free tastings, and conversations with the chefs. Some newspapers have now started to make recommendations for solo diners at the restaurant reviews. Yeah, eating at a bar is pretty cool. You can hang out and talk to people. Yeah. In Mall, a pop-up restaurant in Amsterdam, only features tables for one. Who would have guessed that such a venue would have been booked solid for a year since opening its doors? No surprise then that those behind this venture, are currently planning to expand, with branches planned for London, Berlin, New York, Antwerp, and beyond. In the words of Marina van Goor, the project's designer, I noticed that in our society there is no room for being alone in public spaces unless you're going somewhere. My suspicion is that changing the layout of the restaurant so that it caters solely for individual diners will never be anything more than a niche offering, given how much more we still rate the eating experience more highly when with company. That said, many restaurateurs could nevertheless do much more to adapt what they're doing to this change in our eating habits. Wonder if there are certain things to talk about while eating socially that tend to make the meal better and tend to make the meal worse. What are the subjects to talk about? Today, all I want to talk about is Mr. Beast and Beast Games. What a great show. So good. Amazing content. And also Pluto, this other show I've been watching recently. So I want to talk about media. And that's about it. Maybe depending on the company, I might want to talk about AI stuff. I've got some friends who know how to build apps. And I've been trying to build an app with ChatGPT. It's been going very well. So I might want to talk about that too. But more so depending on the person, because I really don't like to teach or explain a lot. So I'd rather be with somebody who can pick up what I'm talking about really quickly and then tell me what to do. Give me some strat. Tapasization. Tapas. Tapas means small plates. I don't know if it actually literally means that, but they're small dishes. I think it's Spanish. The word is Spanish, but I think it's a Spanish thing. Could also call it the dim sumization, maybe. Even as solo dining is on the rise, statistical analysis of the language of restaurant menus reveals a marked increase in the use of sharing terms. Nowadays, one is far more likely to see charcuterie boards, tapas, and meze plates appearing on a menu. All note dishes designed for sharing. I don't know what a meze is. I'm going to look that up. M-E-Z-Z-E. Meze. The style of heating hot and cold dishes, dips and breads and drinks. It's Mediterranean. Also, maybe meza, meza, meze, meze. Nowadays, one is far more likely to see charcuterie boards, tapas, and meze plates appearing on menus, all dishes for sharing. They are more informal, another popular trend in dining currently. Here in Oxford, for example, at the top gastro pub, the Magdalen Arms, many of the dishes on the menu are for 2, 3, 4, and even 5 diners to share. And then there is the rise of tasting menus. Lots of smaller plates chosen by the chef. More often than not, everyone at the table has to agree to order these, which is pretty cool. I like those a lot. As a gastrophysicist, I would advise the restaurateur to seat diners at a round table as if that is what they want the customers to do, because people are more likely to feel like they belong when seated at a round table than at a square one. People are more likely to feel like they belong. They have the feeling of belonging when they are seated at a round table than at a square one. I'm wondering if this one's not backed by any like particular study. It'd be cool to know if that's something by a study. By contrast, those at an angular table tend to show more selfish traits in group settings. All of a sudden, the fact that a Chinese banquet are held at circular tables starts to make much more sense. And going even further back, don't forget about King Arthur. King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The main reason for seating diners at angular tables is to maximize the number of diners in a space. That said, while the round table is certainly more of a democratic solution, if it is too large, it can make conversing with those on the other side of the table a bit awkward. It is not just the place that restaurateurs want you to share these days. You have probably come across the communal and informal dining concept whereby everyone gets to sit at large, long tables. This approach constitutes a distinctive aspect of the design of restaurants like Wagamama and Busaba Itao, both successful ventures from the top restaurateur Alan Yao. The pain quotidian The pain quotidian chain does much the same. In some sense, anyone who chooses to frequent one of these informal eating establishments is sharing a table with strangers, though, as the saying goes, there are no strangers, just friends you have not yet to meet. The physical distance from those sitting next to you might well be the same as in other popular restaurants, where they cram the tables for two against the banquet. And yet, I believe that there's still something qualitatively different about being connected, parked at the same long table, in fact. I think that you can feel a new gastrophysics experiments coming on to get to the bottom of the matter. Just how much do you think we enjoy the experience when crammed at a long table with strangers sitting right next to you? As always, there is definitely more research to be done. Have you ever thought about how strange dining out is? No, I've never had that thought, and I'm not convinced either, so I have not thought about it. Think about it carefully, and you begin to see how strange it all is, eating in public in close proximity to strangers. How, for example, might someone from another culture view the social aspects of dining in a restaurant if they were to visit our Western 21st century world? Perhaps, much like Antoine Rosny, a Peruvian traveler, despite his French-sounding name. Antoine Rosny, who described his experience on first visiting the Parisian restaurant back in the start of the 19th century, in the very early days of the restaurant. On arriving in the dining room, I remarked with astonishment numerous tables were placed one beside another, which made me think that we were waiting for a large group party, or perhaps we were going to dine at the host table. But to my surprise, it was its greatest when I saw people enter without greeting each other and without seeming to know each other, sit themselves without looking at each other, and eat separately without speaking to another, or offering to share each other's food. Okay, so a Peruvian person goes to a Parisian restaurant in the 19th century and is confused about it. So that means that it's strange for us? That's not how that works. Eating out is not strange. One intriguing performance art piece that probes the meaning of sharing a meal comes from the Indonesian artist Mela Jarsma. Members of the public, anywhere in between 2 to 6 of them, are invited to put on a bib from which a flat table surface is suspended. Diners pair up and then both of them order and subsequently feed each other. This kind of intimate performance gives rise to the literally shared meal. Notice also how this wearable table temporarily binds the diners or the performers as they create a mutually supported surface from which to eat. Here, as you can see, folks are feeding each other. And they're wearing bibs that are, I guess, a part of the table. Though I do worry about what exactly happens when one of the diners needs to visit the toilet. The bibs are connected to each other, not to the table. Connected to each other underneath the table. That's bizarre. The comment of one participant who took part in this is interesting. In enacting Melajarsma's piece, I experienced feeding another person and being fed by another person for the first time in my adult life. Throughout the meal, one constant remained. The way the ritual of feeding and being fed articulates power relations, our proximity to those we have power towards makes us generous. One wishes this was the case more often outside of art. Artist Maria Vogue Zhang. How would a Dutch person pronounce the Z sound? Z. Vogelzang. Maria Vogelzang. Zang? No. Artist Maria Vogelzang from the Netherlands has created a piece called The Sharing Dinner, in which the diners are connected by a cloth. This is visually striking installation. Diners insert their heads and arms through slits in a white tablecloth suspended from the ceiling. As the artist notes, I used the table with a tablecloth, but instead of putting the cloth on the table, I made slits in it and suspended it in the air so that the participants sat with their heads inside of the space and their bodies outside. This physically connects each person. If I pull on the tablecloth here, you can feel it there, covering everyone's clothing and creating a sense of equality. Initially, I was concerned that people would reject the experience, particularly because the participants didn't know each other beforehand. But it actually increased their desire to relate to one another and brought about a feeling of being in something together. Vogelzang, Zhang, Vogelzang, I don't know why I'm pronouncing it like that. Vogelzang also uses food to encourage sharing. She would serve one person a slice of melon on a plate that was cut into two. Meanwhile, the person sitting in the opposite table would be given ham or a similar plate. This resulted in the participants, many of whom did not know each other, naturally sharing their food and making the classic combination of melon and ham. Never had this combination, I don't think, melon and ham. I'm going to ask ChatGPT, how do I pronounce his name? I want to pronounce a name that is a Dutch name. It looks like it's Maria Vogelzang. I'm just going to show you what it is. Tell me how to pronounce that.
Sure, the name of the Vogelzang is pronounced as Maria Vogelzang. The first name, Mariah, sounds like Mariah, and the last name, Vogelzang, sounds like Vogelzang.
Maria Vogelzang. That's all it is. Maria Vogelzang. The telematic dinner party. Many of us are fortunate enough to have a family to dine with. Nevertheless, still sometimes find ourselves away from home when traveling from work, say. As a result, we can all too easily miss out on shared time together centered around the dinner table. Indeed, this has been identified as a growing problem by researchers working in the field of human-computer interaction, a number of whom have started to investigate whether technology can somehow be used to reconnect people who find themselves far apart, allowing them to share meaningful and embodied virtual mealtime experiences. Thus, the idea of the telematic dinner party is born. Just think of it as Skyping while eating. And it says, think of it as skeeting. Skyping while eating. We don't even use Skype anymore. Alright, we're in the future. While this concept is undoubtedly an intriguing one, there are a number of challenges for anyone wanting to make a successful technological intervention in this space. For example, what happens when those who are dining together digitally eat different foods? Does that hinder their making a connection? Another important issue here concerns how to make this kind of virtually shared dining experience more immersive and engaging. As a guest at a preliminarily telematic dining party said, preliminary, yeah, I said that right. I don't feel that I shared food with them. I felt like we were together in one room and they were eating in another room. There was no sense that we were sharing. This is definitely not what tomorrow's experienced designers want to hear. Dining together involves the tight, albeit unconscious, synchronization of the diner's behavior, so that trying to replicate the precisely coordinated choreograph at a different where a lag can sometimes delay the signal coming from one end to the other is likely to disrupt the communal aspects of the meal. I could just possibly imagine this kind of technological solution having value in extreme circumstances. Of course, someone in a long space mission to Mars, say, who wants to reconnect with their family back on planet Earth. However, stuck down here on the ground, I really can't work up any enthusiasm for the telematic diner or dinner party concept, even assuming it worked perfectly with no synchronization issues. I'm tempted here to place my bets on a different technological invention. I am thinking of the various meal sharing apps that have been launched over the last couple of years. For a small fee, they allow those who find themselves alone in an unfamiliar place to dine with a local in their own home. So a meal is physically shared, not just with the subscriber's family. The various sites offering this kind of service each have somewhat a different feel. Thus, there is most likely something for everyone's taste. And if there isn't yet, you can guarantee there will be soon. For instance, I've not heard of this type of site, so I'm a little confused. For instance, the US site the US site Eat With has the feel of a supper club. What is a supper club? While the UK-based site Viz Eat emphasizes the opportunity to eat with locals, to get inside a culture by eating it, as it were. According to Viz Eat's co-founder, Camille Rumani, the site had attracted more than 170,000 hosts in 115 countries within a couple of years, since starting in July in 2014, so between 2014 and 2017. The question that we should probably all be asking ourselves is whether such meal sharing apps will come to revolutionize the way in which we dine with one another when we are far away from home, the same way that an Airbnb has transformed the way that we stay and Uber has transformed the way that we transport. Note here that an Uber Eats app was recently launched in cities across the US with the promise that it makes eating great food from hundreds of restaurants as easy as requesting a ride. I'm here from the future to say that that has definitely worked. According to Euromonitor International, a market intelligence agency in 2015, that was the year to look out for the peer-to-peer dining as one of the biggest trends. This involves direct interaction between cook and diner without the mediation of a restaurant chain. Just think of all the chefs who are starting to cook from home as a symptomatic of this trend. But I would argue by far the biggest potential market of those individuals who haven't left their own home and yet still have no one to dine with. One recent startup connecting them is Table Crowd, which combines eating with local social networking. Another is Table, spelled without an E at the end, which offers essentially curated social dining in the south of England. Dining together is such a primal urge, so next time you get peckish, why not invite someone to eat with you? Most likely you will end up having a better time than you would have if you ate alone. Just remember to order first, though, if you want to maximize your enjoyment. Wow, that was a long chapter and I really didn't get much out of it. Just a little bit of disagreement and I guess some interesting stories. Cool art pieces, but not relevant to what I'm thinking about. So I'm hearing a song of well, is this still play? I'm hearing a song that I recently used for an edited video, and it makes me think of if we have in OBS, if there is a equalizer that I could use. There's a 3-band equalizer. So generally when I edit videos, if I ever add music, I will cut out the range the frequencies that are associated with the human voice from the music, so that if there's somebody speaking or if I'm speaking while the music is playing, then it doesn't get super muddy. This just has a 3-band equalizer without telling the frequency range. I'd have to look up what the frequency range is. But maybe just giving a mid-cut.
Thank heaven, the crisis, the dangerous past, and the lingering illness is over at last. And the fever called living is conquered at last.
I didn't realize you could just give it plugins. That's pretty cool. I can just add plugins to my OBS. Plugins as in, I can add audio VST plugins.
The pitiless pain have ceased with the fever that maddened my brain. With the fever called living that burned in my brain.
Today I'm using silver pot. Got silver on silver on silver. Silver pot, silver pitcher, silver cup. I've got these all out because I want to clean them or remove the tarnish. Well, it does look pretty good. You can see there's a major difference and tarnish going on here. Anyway, I want to clean these all and see how they look. Looking fresh. Presumably, once I clean them, they will look fresh. So I've got these all down here. And I haven't used this silver pot in a long time. A couple months. So I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I like having the triple silver. It feels really good. Alright, y'all. That's the stream. It's been fun. Y'all take it easy. I'll be back another time for another thing. See ya.